Steven Crowder isn't a comedian as much as he's someone who is aware that comedy exists. And what I mean is, he knows enough about comedy to pretend to be a Norm Macdonald fan. He knows enough about comedy to lift bits from people like Tom Green and the Opie and Anthony Show. But even when he's lifting other people's material, he somehow finds a way to suck all the humor out. This is a clip of Steven Crowder at UMass speaking at a Young Republicans event. And he's going to attempt to replicate an important part of an important moment from the career of Bill Burr.
Hey. We wanted to come out here and tell a few jokes. We wanted to have a thoughtful discussion. We want an open conversation of ideas. You guys can't be grown adults enough to literally wait 10 minutes to the point where we open the floor. And unlike leftists, guess what? We don't try and ban you when your speakers come to school. We don't show up and protest and call them, oh, shut up, you just got owned and now you're trying to come back 5 minutes later. It's like George...
He's responding, Steven Crowder is responding to a single heckler in an auditorium of supporters. And I think might be one other heckler, I'm not sure. But what he's attempting to replicate is something called the Philly rant. This is something that comedy fans have seen or heard. And it was one of the things that broke Bill Burr. Bill Burr was at a comedy festival in Philadelphia. And there were about 10,000 drunken Philadelphians in attendance. And they started turning on the comics. And when Bill Burr went up, they started turning on him. So he turned on them. And he roasted the entire city of Philadelphia in a very brutal fashion, wishing terrible things on them. The difference is, it was very brave of Bill Burr to do this, because had a riot broken out, he would have been to blame. But problem with Steven Crowder attempting to replicate that is the brave person, in this particular case, is the heckler he's responding to. One heckler, maybe two, in an auditorium filled with rabid Republicans. And given the recent news from Texas, I think we all understand how dangerous that is. And that's what Steven Crowder does when he steals a bit. He sucks all the humor out by removing the context. So, for example, he stole a Tom Green bit called Undercutter's Pizza. Tom Green would follow pizza delivery drivers around to different people's houses with a tackle box full of ingredients, and he would offer to cook that same pizza on the spot for half the price. He nearly got beaten to death with a hammer because of this bit. Steven Crowder took the mechanics of that bit, but ruined it by changing the context. The context in which he did that bit was he tried to undercut day laborers. Immigrant laborers who he threatened to call ICE on. Another example was him dressing like a woman. Now, Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon, they were in drag in Some Like It Hot. Classic comedy film. But Steven Crowder ruined it by changing the context, which is he's a terrible writer and it's no longer 1959. Let's continue.
The jerk store, Carl. They're running out of you, George Costanza, you androgynous little amoeba. And by the way, these opinions you're yelling out, they're not even your opinions. They're your opinions from your gender studies professor, and the really reason you picked it was because you thought it was your best chance at getting laid. You just decided to...
I've heard that cliche before. This is not an original thought. The idea that leftists are only leftists because it helps them get laid. And what I love about this cliche that Steven Crowder did not think of on his own is that the implied admission that conservatives are utterly unfuckable. But let's be real, though. Steven Crowder has had sex before. with one woman his entire life. You'd think, though, that, long, squeaky voice diatribes in defense of slavery would be more of a panty dropper, but surprisingly, no.
Walk on in to try and pick up chicks at the San Francisco retread pot-smoking drum circle, only to realize that your very glance in the direction of a woman causes a barren womb. Oh, you think this is gonna get better? No. Is he gonna check his privilege? That's not going to happen.
That's the other thing, the check your privilege thing. I don't know what he's talking about. When Bill Burr did his rant, he was very detailed, very specific. He knew all their sports teams. He was shitting all over their bridges. He was literally insulting their bridges. He went into such detail. He made fun of them for having a statue of the Sylvester Stallone character Rocky Balboa. Because Joe Frazier was born and raised in Philadelphia. Or he was from Philadelphia. And Joe Frazier is a real-life boxer. He accused them of racism for preferring a made-up, imaginary boxer who isn't a real person but a character in a movie. They had a statue honoring that guy, but not Joe Frazier, Muhammad Ali's toughest opponent. They've since remedied that. I don't know if it was because of the Bill Burr, the Philly rant, but they have since put up a statue of Joe Frazier. And that's Steven Crowder's problem here. I've never had anybody tell me to check my privilege, and I've been on Earth for a long time. In fact, this summer I'm going to be the oldest I have ever been, and I have never once been told to check my privilege. I don't know what he's talking about when he's trying to insult me. Now, I've had some comments, and I've heard some comments. I had some comments on the last Steven Crowder video I did, saying that his wife knew what she was getting into when she married him. Now, I am not defending his wife. I am sure that she is a terrible, terrible person. But it's perfectly reasonable for her to believe that his misogynistic bullying that he displayed so publicly would not apply to her in their private life. Ben Shapiro has a video called How Feminism Ruined Marriage. Well, Ben Shapiro has a wife who is a doctor. He brags of this. So apparently, feminism has benefited his marriage. Dave Rubin has said on a few occasions that if children even find out about the existence of gay marriage, it would be a terrible trauma to their psyche. And yet he's married to a dude, and they have 2 children. What I'm saying is that hypocrisy is so integral to the conservative character that the fact that Steven Crowder turned out to be an abuser is almost a coincidence.